Hello everybody. Deep learning series continues today. The main question is, how do you make sure whether you really learned something or whether learning was only an illusion? If you haven't done it already, please check my first video on this series. It was about transfer. There I described what transfer is in learning contexts and how you can apply it to chess contexts. Because I've seen myself as a coach many times that students sometimes tend to memorize and they rely on rote memorization rather than deeper learning of a chess concept. And if they do that, they cannot apply that knowledge to different contexts that show deeper similarities. This is what transfer is, and this should be the goal of our training. When you learn a chess concept, you should be aiming to apply that concept to other tasks, other contexts that show similarities. Okay, so today I will continue with the concept of the minority attack to describe transfer in chess. It's white to play here, folks. You can take a step back and find a good plan for white. A very typical plan, obviously, in the Carlsbad structure. It's called the minority attack. Okay, so obviously the idea is to go b4, b5 to create a target on c6 and then pile up against that pawn on c6. That's a textbook example. In fact, I even took it from a beautiful book from Michael Steen, Simple Chess, where he describes the minority attack plan with this position. I'm sure many of you have heard about it and maybe even applied it in the Carlsbad structure. But can we really transfer the underlying concepts to different tasks? That's the main question. Very briefly, the plan goes like this, okay? Just follow white's plan. I'm just going to show you the moves very, very quickly, right? It's a stock standard minority attack plan on the queen side. The idea is to isolate a weakness on c6. Now, if black takes the pawn, obviously, then this will leave this pawn and this pawn as targets, and white is having a good game. For example, here, as you can see, after the b4, b5 push, the pawn on c6 become isolated and white piles up on that pawn immediately with moves like rook c1 to follow very, very soon, folks, right? So a very standard plan, basically. c6 pawn is backward and white has a good position. Just to show you Michael Steen's analysis, queen b1 is a nice move because if the queens are traded, the c6 pawn becomes further target, and after this series of exchanges, knight b4, white will win the pawn on c6, right? Now, this plan, the minority attack, does not only apply to the Carlsbad pawn structure, folks. If you really understood the deeper mechanics of it, you can apply it to different pawn structures. And that's the beauty of learning such plans, that you can transfer it to different tasks. For example, I will show you exactly what I mean, folks. Let's do some spaced repetition because I've shown you this position in my series Chess Strategy Deep Dive. Can you recall the best plan for white in this position? Take your time. Please stop the video and come up with a good plan for white. Congratulations, folks. If you found the beautiful plan a4, a5, and white creates a target on the queen side, because that's exactly what we learned. I want you to sort of summarize what you learned in the previous example by using these concepts, right? The idea is to use pawns to create weaknesses in the enemy camp and give targets to our pieces. That's what you learned in the previous example, and now you're applying it, you're transferring that knowledge to different pawn structure, right? a4, a5 is coming, and if black takes that pawn, then this will leave this a7 pawn as weak, and white will pile up against that pawn using the heavy pieces, right? But if black doesn't take the pawn, then obviously white will take on b6, and then this will give us a target on b6, right? There's a name for that. Yeah, it's a minority attack because white is sort of pushing the one pawn against two pawns, but it's totally about the mechanics and the real understanding of the plan that makes it so powerful. After a4, obviously, if black goes a5, then this will leave this pawn as a target on b6. So after rook b1, white is having a very, very good game. You see, if you understood really what Carlsbad structure has taught us deeply, then you can apply it to different contexts. Another position, folks. Check this out. It's black to play. I want you to take a step back, look at the options, and come up with a good plan. Can you transfer what you learned today to this position, folks. Take your time. Now, that's a very interesting game, actually. Well, if you look at the bigger picture, white has some potential on the king side, also using this e5 knight bishop. Maybe this bishop will have some job in the future. Maybe the rook can lift, right? So white has some ideas on the king side. So black should seek play on the queen side to distract white from achieving its plan. So let me ask you folks, what are you thinking? What should black do in this position? Congratulations if you found the move a4. At first sight, this looks ridiculous because you're actually driving the bishop to a beautiful looking diagonal. Why did you do this? Well, the follow-up is coming. Obviously a3. If you found this whole plan, a4, a3, you're a great player, because this way black is destroying the pawn chain, and inevitably white must give us targets on the queen side, right? Look at the effectiveness of this, yeah, you might say minority attack plan, right? Because black has 2 pawns versus 3 pawns on the queen side, but it's not really a Carlsbad looking structure, right? Things are different in this case. And in this case, black actually doesn't go for, let's say, the minority attack Carlsbad plan before, but actually chooses a different way, right? But the idea is the same. You want to create a target on the queen side using pawns. And after takes, black achieves the plan, right? 2 pawns are targets. You might say b5 pawn is also a target, but it's difficult for white to make use of it. And obviously, things are immediately under fire. White played bishop b3 in the actual game. And after bishop d5, black had an okay game. Now, if you rely too much on the surface similarity of the Carlsbad structure and this position, maybe you thought black should go b4. But in this case, this will not be good, right? Like mere repetition, memorization isn't good, because after takes, just look what happened, right? What was your plan? Your plan was to achieve clear targets on the queen side. And yes, you might say a2 pawn is now under fire, but it's already well defended and no one can attack the pawn on b2, right? So your minority attack plan doesn't really achieve much here after b4. In fact, this b4 pawn is now isolated. It's more overextended. It can be a target for the white pieces, right? That's why this position is so interesting, because b4 also looks very good for black. In fact, right after this series of moves, white in this endgame that will ensue, white is actually slightly better, right? Because of this pawn on b4, this bishop nicely covers the pawn on a2. And yes, it's difficult for black to make use of the freshly created weaknesses on the queen side, right? So interesting. If you go back to this position, folks, right? You don't always need to follow the plan that you saw in the Carlsbad pawn structure, right? Give yourself choices. But the idea is the same. If you really deeply understood the essence of the minority attack plan, the essence is to create targets for our pieces using pawns, right? You can distill it to its core element. It's pawn play to create targets and weaknesses. Then you can actually achieve these moves in the actual games, right? This is a beautiful plan that actually gave black an advantage after a3. Obviously, after b3, you hang a pawn, and white has nothing much to prove for that pawn. Otherwise, the whole chain is destroyed, right? And you achieve your goal on the queen side. Hopefully it was useful for you guys. Let me sum up with this position. It's black to move. How would you evaluate this endgame? That's my question to you. You might say, what's the relevance of all this? Why are you showing us this position, right? Now it's about deeper similarities. I want you to transfer what you learned today to this position. It's about evaluation. How would you evaluate this rook endgame? Who is better and why? And maybe you can come up with some plans for both sides. Please write down your comments on YouTube. I will respond in my next video about this position. And also, please give me a like or subscribe if you like this video, because I will continue doing more of such videos about deep learning and deep transfer. Today was about minority attack, but deeply about pawn play for weaknesses. And I want you to tell me maybe more ideas, right? What kind of subjects should I touch? I have some ideas about exchanges, piece exchanges next, because that's also lends nicely to conceptual understanding and transfer of what you learn to different contexts, right? So we take it one step at a time, and I'm here to support your chess game. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions on YouTube, and I will catch you very, very soon, folks. Thank you.